I always do like to throw in, we've all been on our very best behavior with, treating people with respect, whether it's over the Zoom or keyboard courage in the chat. Let's continue to do that. And just like an in-person meeting, we will ask folks to leave if we can't maintain respect, even when people disagree. That's why we're here. Thanks everybody for doing such a good job of that this whole year. We have a great lineup today, mostly focused on the recently passed New York State budget, which had a ton of great stuff in it. I think we haven't been able to say that for quite a while. This is a great effort by all those involved. I see Kenan in the background. Shout out to Kenan. So we have a few folks who are going to speak to us about the budget. First, I wanted to just flag, now that we're out of petitioning season, and that was a great job by everybody, as we've talked about. I wanted to talk about the next steps, which is our campaign work. We had a very successful phone bank for Lincoln Wrestler. I guess that was last week. And, as always, the campaigns are very appreciative of our work. And, in a crowded, almost all of these races are very crowded. And I keep hearing that there's rather low voter attention being paid to these races. So getting our candidates' names out there really matters, and making sure that folks are hearing their message. So I did want to flag, because I know y'all want to sign up. There's a great place where you can do that, and Alyssa has made this awesome calendar, and put a lot of work into making it real time and responsive to what's going on. So if you go to indbrooklyn.org, can you guys see my screen? Okay, awesome.
Looks good.
So we've got here, you click on, it'll be the first page that comes up when you go to indbrooklyn.org, and you've got April. And so, for example, here we are on the 15th, true prophecy. We had a general meeting today, but then you can also see these upcoming events. For example, on Sunday, Bridget Ryan is having a press conference with Senator Hoylman, and you can see where it is and where it will be on the map. We are also hosting, and then one thing I definitely want to have Joseph talk about more in a second, but we will have weekly Monday phone banks for Joanne Simon. And so here you've got the date and the time and the Zoom link to show up, or you can just click this hyperlink at the given time, and you'll be plugged right into the Zoom just like you were tonight. So all of these phone banks are real. We're having one on the 22nd for Rosemary Montalbano, who's actually at a fundraiser right now. Otherwise, she did stop by and say hi. But you can just click here, and there's an RSVP link right here. And we'll continue to make this page live as we add more events. I know Bridget Ryan, there will be a phone bank on the 29th. Seamus, I haven't put it up there yet, but you'll be able to see different events, different ways to get involved. If you're on the fence about joining, I would encourage you to do it, especially if you haven't done it before. It's pretty easy once you do one or two calls. People are interested in talking. We got a little bit of COVID loneliness, like we were talking about. So our campaigns are relying on us, and I don't know. It's been fun so far, and it's going to be dense in April and May and June. Just about 10 weeks till the primary. So if you're able, and I think everybody's able, come on out. It'll be fun. I'll try to be at most of them, but other than that, they should be pleasant. Let's see. Oh, Jonathan Kopp, pro tip. It's super convenient to subscribe to IND's Google Calendar, so it shows up in your own personal calendar. That is a great call. Everybody should do that. I actually haven't done that, so I'm going to do that tonight. And so I guess with that, does anybody have any questions about phone banking? Danielle, did I leave anything out?
Nope. I think IND calendar is the best source for all our candidates, and we update that regularly with all the fun stuff going on.
Yeah, and I will try to post the events on Facebook as well. But the that's just a way for people to kind of become aware of them. The good source is the calendar. If you ever have questions about what's coming up, reach out to me or our Facebook page. We'll be sure we get you the information. And I think that's all I was hoping to cover with the phone banks. I guess just to emphasize, this primary is, for all intents and purposes, it feels like it's tomorrow. It's going to sneak up on us. And let's get our candidates in the best position we can, and we can make a difference. And so I guess with that, I would like to introduce Joseph Jordan to speak about some of this upcoming work. Joseph is Joanne Simon's new field director. Joseph, thank you for coming. Welcome. And what's up with Joanne's campaign? How's it going?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, for letting me take this opportunity to talk. I recognize a few people here, specifically district leaders Pierce and Julio Pena from LID Functions. My name is Joe, pronouns he, him, his. I am Joanne Simon's new field director. And yeah, I just wanted to share some updates, but before I get into that, I wanted to thank everybody here at IND. You guys have been an integral part of this campaign since before I came onto it. Without the efforts of this group, we would not have been able to get the signatures that we needed as fast as we did. So again, thank you guys so much. Thank you to Ms. Joe Millman for helping us tremendously. There's a lot of political clubs out there that are really just talk, but like this is one of those few that actually walks the walk and gets things done for people. So once again, thank you all. You're an amazing group of people. So diving right into it, now that we're done with the petitioning, we're going full steam ahead with our field operations. We have our team of organizers is now on a young, diverse group that has already been doing a bunch of DVC, reaching out to individuals, and as a result, putting together a lot of volunteer opportunities and events that we would love to see you guys at. First and foremost, our Monday phone bank, which is being done in conjunction with LID as well as CBID. The first one is next Monday at 7 o'clock. I'm going to drop the link, which is also on your guys' calendar, but I'm going to drop it into the chat right here for everyone to register if they would like to come. Joanne is going to be joining us for the first part of it to address everyone, say hi, make a couple calls herself. But we're really excited to have our inaugural one of this on Monday, as well as having them every Monday from that point onwards. We're also really starting to push hard with our canvassing operations. This Saturday, we're actually going to be knocking some doors in Joanne's neighborhood around her house in Borum Hill. If you guys are interested in doing that, please feel free to send me your information directly on here. I can follow up as well with a registration link on that to put on the calendar. But yeah, we're really looking forward to talking to voters as soon as we can, to making sure that everybody who's an early voter, for example, knows about this election, knows about the ins and outs of ranked choice voting, because most people still don't know that, and to do everything we can to win this for Joanne and for all the candidates that we love. Susanna, am I missing anything?
No, that's awesome. So glad you're helping Joanne, and definitely look forward to everybody else at IND doing the fabulous things that you do. And yeah, Joe can share his email in the chat too, so you guys have it, but we'll make sure to get it on the calendar.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Joseph. Yeah, so the only thing I would add, I mean, sort of in the spirit of friendly competition, I mean, I think it would be best if IND had the best turnout, at least on the inaugural Monday one, co-hosted by BYD and CBID and LID. But let's get out there. Come on, let's say this is a
well, and Jared Rader, he's very competitive. He's going to be pushing the entire board to come too. So you gotta show him up.
100% agree. I'm going to get text if we don't have more people than anybody else. So let's do it. I can't wait. I'll be there on Monday. I hope everyone else can be there. I will say that the conversations, I never think they're that bad on the phones, but they've been pretty pleasant so far. I think it's going to be a good time. And I always like to remind people, you don't have to stay for 2 hours. It can be 45 minutes of calls is a lot more than none. So yeah, come on out. It'll be a lot of fun. and let's have a good turnout from IND. I see Joe's email is there, and the Zoom sign up link is there as well. So that's perfect. Thank you so much, and welcome aboard. All right, I want to move us along. I see. I guess we'll do some quick updates from any elected officials. I know I saw Jesse Pierce. Jesse, is there anything you want to check in with the group?
Sure. Hi, thank you so much, Tyler. Hi, ID. So nice to be with you all tonight. Looking forward to a time we can be in person, which is feeling sooner and sooner. And hi to Joe, big fan of Joe's. So I think the only thing is poll workers, and I saw Leonard on here, and Leonard, I want to let you know that I owe you a phone call. So I'll be giving you a call soon. Joan relayed your message, but yeah, poll workers. So we're continuing to recruit poll workers. There does seem to be a thing with the Board of Elections. They've delayed training a little bit, which is mildly concerning. But Gowanus Mutual Aid, who I believe is one of the speakers at a general meeting, at least one or two back, they're having a block party on Sunday from 11 to 3 p.m., I believe, which is at the corners of Douglas and Bond Street, nearby Gowanus houses. We'll be doing some tabling there just to introduce people to being poll workers, also talk about ranked choice voting. And Jan Cambobiano, who's I think on the call, she's going to help me out doing that. And then we're trying to have, I've been in conversations with Miss Bell over at Wyckoff Gardens and Miss Brown over at Warren Houses to have some sessions on Saturdays at those respective places to recruit people to be poll workers, and again, just to have conversations about ranked choice voting. So if anyone's interested in all things Board of Elections / poll workers, please feel free to reach out. We have talks on Monday evenings to coordinate on different efforts that we're trying to do, but always happy to have more brains and ideas on the conversation. And yeah, I think that's about it. Hope everyone's having a nice rainy Thursday evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. I don't think I saw Josh. Josh, if you're on and I'm not seeing you, please flag me. But I think we've sort of moved now into the part, sort of what I'm certainly looking forward to, a discussion of the New York State budget. Although Joe, I see your hands raised. What's up?
I'm just wondering, do we anticipate any changes in polling sites for the primary?
Yes, I have not heard any feedback. Joe, thank you for the question regarding polling sites specifically. We just got a new Board of Elections coordinator, so I'll take that down to ask that specifically, but I haven't heard any changes for either early voting or primary day specifically.
Great. Thanks. And that's a good reminder. If anybody does have a question or comment, feel free to use the raised hand function, which is on the reactions tab on the bottom there. And so I think it is now my pleasure to turn it over to our Senator Brian Kavanagh, who can tell us everything that's been going on up in Albany. I'm especially interested in hearing all about the recent budget wins. So Senator Kavanagh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Can you hear it? It sounds okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, a lot to report. I don't even know if I won't try to cover the full breadth of our $212 billion budget. But we really did have a very successful budget season, partly because, of course, our federal representatives came through with very substantial amounts of federal money that blunted some of the reductions in revenue we've seen at the state, and allowed us to allocate those funds in addition to state funds. We did increase taxes on basically in really there are three broad revenue elements. One is a personal income tax surcharge that kicks in on people making more than $1 million annually as a single person, or $2 million filing jointly. And we actually put additional brackets in for 5 million and 25 million respectively, which generate surprising amounts of money. There's lots of people making $25 million a year or more, and some making quite a bit more. We also increased the corporate franchise tax, again, designing that so it doesn't fall on smaller businesses or smaller entities. And another revenue source is legalizing mobile sports betting, although that doesn't generate a huge amount of revenue in the first year. It will generate $500 million once fully implemented, is the estimate. So all told, that led to 3.6 billion or so additional revenue this year and 4.3 billion next year. Just the highlights, again, there was a lot of good things going on. We have finally, I think you're going to hear from AQE on education spending a little later in this meeting, or maybe you already have, but
later, yeah.
Okay, so I won't talk too much about that, just to say that there's been a dispute for many years over what's called foundation aid, the basic sort of foundation of funding from the state to local school districts, and we are finally have a deal to eliminate the shortfall in that was uncovered initially in the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit many years ago. And that included an 11% increase this year for New York City schools. We funded the Excluded Worker Fund. This is a fund that's intended to offset the fact that people who are not able to participate in many of the benefits that people have relied upon during COVID-19 pandemic, including unemployment, and also those one-off checks from the federal government, really have been struggling. So we created a fund that will max out at $2.1 billion, which is a rough estimate of the entire need statewide, that will be available for people who, because of immigration status, haven't been able to get those other benefits. We did $1 billion, including 800 million in grants and 200 million in tax credits for small business relief around COVID. I chair the housing committee, so I've been particularly focused on that, and I think some of you heard me speak about that before. But we have finally now have a full-fledged rental assistance program. It's called the COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program. It's based on a bill I had written and been pushing for some time now, and it will basically pay the full arrears for renters of up to a year and 3 additional months of rent if people are still struggling and rent burdened. And it also pay the full arrears of utilities for a year as well. And that should be launched very soon. The state is gearing up and getting this application process and a kind of statewide application portal up and running. So we should be seeing that soon. And that's obviously a huge relief for tenants, but also for many small landlords, and in some cases homeowners who are just renting out a unit or two to cover their mortgage. We also have a $600 million fund for homeowner relief directly. We created a new program that is intended, it's really a kind of a pilot to begin the process of trying to convert some underused hotels to affordable housing. We funded that with $100 million. And we also created a new program to provide permanent housing for homeless New Yorkers. We have about 90,000 homeless New Yorkers. Obviously, that was a crisis before COVID-19, but I think COVID-19 in this and many other areas has exposed, the real hardship that comes from living in a public place or living in congregate shelter. So I had pushed a program called Housing Access Vouchers, which would be a very comprehensive program. We were not able to get that full program agreed upon by the executive, but we did put $100 million into a program that should begin to provide, again, long-term permanent housing in the form of rental assistance. The program I proposed was modeled on Section 8. This, I think it's fair to say, is more loosely modeled on Section 8, but still is the same basic concept. You get rental assistance that covers the difference between 30% of your income and your rent. And at least half of that money needs to go to people who are actually experiencing homelessness currently, and the rest could go to people who are at risk of homelessness. And again, it's just a start, but it's the first really big new investment by the state in preventing homelessness and providing permanent housing. we put some capital money into the public housing system, which is in desperate need as well. I think that's the range on housing. There's a lot in this budget. We have, I think now the most generous child care subsidy system in America, which is, obviously a huge benefit for the development of children, but also should be, a great benefit for many people who, struggle with parenting responsibilities and work. So it's really is a huge step forward. There's a lot else, but I could go on, as they say, but I think I'll stop there on the budget. Just on one more note on housing, we have an eviction and foreclosure moratorium in place based on a bill that we passed in December that I introduced. It expires May 1st, so I will be pushing, and I'm sure Joanne and others will be joining me in pushing for an extension of that. We're obviously not out of the woods in terms of the public health threat of COVID-19. So I think it's going to be, I think my colleagues and I will come to an agreement to extend that for some meaningful period into the future. But that's not something we didn't take up in the budget. So we're back in session next week. I'm hoping to act quickly on that. So I think I'll stop there. Happy to take questions or comments.
Awesome. Thank you. I think, Jason, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Hey, I did. Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator. That good job. That was a very good budget, it seems like, from a lot of points. One of the things I always love when we get our electeds to come tell us about the budget is hearing the sort of behind the scenes context, so to the degree you're comfortable, obviously the governor was dealing with all kinds of other things that he's dealing with right now. How was this cycle different than previous cycles? What was that like?
It was an odd, this is my 15th year in Albany, my 15th budget. And there have been perhaps some stranger times, but it is a pretty odd environment right now. About half of us in the Democratic conference in each.
We may have lost him. Huh.
Let the record reflect he dodged the question.
Well, hopefully he's able to get back on pretty soon, because I would love to hear the answer to that question as well. We'll give him a second, but maybe in the meantime, I do see that Joanne, I believe I saw you arrived. Would you like to check in with us, see how what's been going on with the campaign and in Albany as well?
Well, thank you, Tyler. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to see you and everybody. And it's wonderful to have a budget done that took a while, took a week longer than we anticipated. But it's on the whole, a very good budget. For many of my colleagues who've been in office for a very long time, they are blown away by just how progressive this budget is and are very pleased with it. We know, as usual, we didn't get everything that some of us wanted, but we did make a lot of progress. I know I came in the middle of Brian's presentation, so I hope not to recreate too much of what he talked about. Am I correct that he talked primarily about housing? No?
I would say he focused on housing, but he gave a rough overview of some of the other bigger budget areas. But
Okay.
But you can tell us what happened. That's totally fine.
Well, and I know you're going to have a presentation from AQE, correct?
Yeah,
So,
in fact, Ms. Ansari has arrived, so
wonderful.
that's coming up.
So we are, and she'll talk about it in greater detail, but one of the things I'm most happy about, because it's something I've been advocating for since before I was in the assembly, and that is to pay the money through the Campaign for Fiscal Equity and foundation aid to our schools. It has been taken 27 years from the time they filed that suit, alleging decades of underinvestment in our schools in New York City and other urban areas that were just given very inequitable funding. And then it was litigated for years. And then after it was litigated, we finally got the foundation aid formula, and then we had a stock market crash, and but then we didn't get any foundation aid, or we got very little. We got little dribs and drabs. So we will now be getting that money over 3 years, and we'll actually be paying out that which our kids have been needing for the last actually 27 years. So I'm very pleased that we were able to do that. I'm very pleased that we've raised state revenues. We have increased the personal income tax. So those who are earning over $5 million, their tax rate will go up, and those who are earning between 5 million and 25 million, there are fewer of them, but their income tax will go up. And for those who are earning over 25 million, their tax rate will go up even more. And that is going to make a big difference in our budget. We will be able to raise state revenues by $3.5 billion in the first year, and then I think it's 4.3 the following year. And that is a very important change for New York. We have been cutting for years. We've been having an austerity budget instead of an investment budget, and we are really starting to turn that around. And also, of course, a good bit of our budget was funded through the federal government. We've gotten significant aid, about $100 billion in aid from the federal government to help New York recover from COVID. And that goes into some small business grants. We have $800 million in small business grants. We have 25 million just for restaurant resiliency. And we have another 35 million for those restaurants that have been really harmed in areas where COVID was really quite prevalent. We have money for the arts. We have money for the State Council on the Arts as well. We are providing $2.4 billion in federal aid to local services, social service districts. Brian, to talk about the new money that we're providing for children. And that is really important. One of the things we're doing is really changing the way we're doing the money for childcare. We're expanding that, and we're using federal money for it. And we have a commitment that the state will continue to provide those funds in the future. So that is part of what we're setting the pace to raise revenue and to pick up where the federal government's funds will leave off in approximately 2 years. So that is great. We have emergency rental assistance. I know Brian talked about that a great deal. And we also are, instead of raising tuition for SUNY and CUNY students, we are closing the TAP gap over the next 3 years, which makes a difference. Normally, we pay the schools a certain amount of money for TAP. They are required to give more than that in TAP. And so there's this gap which has really hurt the schools because they're basically paying for this TAP gap, and it harms the students as well. So we're changing that, and we also provided $100 million each for CUNY and SUNY for expansion projects. That's really capital dollars that they've needed for a long time. So we're making a difference. We didn't get, I would have preferred to had a little bit more money for SUNY and CUNY, and that we are still going to be working on some ways to improve the financial bearing of CUNY as we go forward. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if Brian talked about transit, but we have a lot of money in transit, and we will be getting additional monies in transit from the infrastructure bill that is not yet decided. But one thing that I think is really important to know is we will be able to be finally moving forward with a congestion pricing, because the Trump administration was sitting on it, wouldn't approve the things that we needed to do to be able to put in the mechanism to be able to collect that congestion pricing. So we are going to be able to move forward with that, and that is very, very good news for New Yorkers. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I would welcome any questions for Joanne. And I think Brian, I think you're back. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I am. I had trouble getting back. I don't know, some kind of connection. I'm gonna stay audio only. That often works better.
Okay, got it. So and yeah, all questions welcome. I think Brian, you're in the middle of answering Jason's question about backroom intrigue, for lack of a better word, the environment of passing this recent budget. So I don't know if you want to pick up on that.
Somehow, as soon as I mentioned the governor, I was cut off.
I know. I was going to say it.
Mysterious. But no, yeah, it is an odd situation. You know, many of us have called for the governor to resign. And I think there's been a lot of departures from the governor's office and from executive agencies. So it was, I mean, we did come down. There was a lot of the conversations the really significant conversations didn't come together till very late. And I think the Assembly and the Senate really did have, you know, a clear vision that we had some major goals to accomplish, and I think stood strong. And, you know, Joanne, of course, leading on many of these issues. But we were able to get, I think, a very strong product at the end. I should note, oddly, the governor has yet to sign the budget, which I don't really know what to make of that. Nor, you know, the budget is due April 1st. We did run a little late, and usually, you know, traditionally there's this urgency about, you know, when the bills get passed and they get signed that night. The clock is ticking. I don't know. I hope that's not some sign of mischief, maybe like looking for things to alter or veto or something. But it definitely is still an odd environment. You know, that question of how much to spend. I mean, you know, there was this Invest in Our New York effort that was going around, which was, you know, I think a lot of us recognize it's a good time to be raising additional revenue for long held goals. But the package of bills that was proposed amounted to somewhere between 50 and $90 billion in additional taxes, depending on how you count it up, which I think, you know, wasn't really very much within the realm of reason or what we really needed to accomplish big things. You know, as I noted before, we ended up with a package that comes in at, you know, $3.5 to $4.3 billion a year over the next 2 years. And we got a lot of tremendous things out of that, which isn't to say we funded all the major needs of the state. You know, I mentioned before that we started out the homelessness permanent housing program with $100 million. That is a need that's going to grow over time. But I do think that, you know, the story of the last couple of years since the Democrats took control of the Senate is that, you know, many of the priorities that Assembly members had fought for a long time are now possible. And I think we added some new items to the list, and we've now got, you know, some very generously funded programs, some of which are, you know, important responses to COVID, and some of which really are going to be with us over the long term. So I think it's, you know, it was a strange process, but I think quite productive in the end.
Great, thank you. Steve, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. Yes, I do. Brian, was there any requirement, well, those poor folks who, because of the immigration status, were unable to receive stimulus checks, that those folks be state taxpayers?
They have to be state residents, and there were two different you know, there are two different programs. One is intended to be the rough equivalent of that, you know, stimulus check that went out regardless. It was income limited, but regardless of any particular COVID related hardship. You know, the federal government just sent those out to people based on their household income. And then there's an additional and larger benefit that is intended to be the rough equivalent of unemployment, although it doesn't, you know, it'll basically be something on the order of $60,000 over the course of 2 years. There are documentation requirements. It's not, you know, there will be a process where people have to, you know, document, and among the elements they have to demonstrate New York residency. So, you know, I think there was a lot of. I guess let me stop there.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Lynn, go ahead. I'm going to go to Jonathan first, if just because he had his hand up, but I'll go to you next. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll get you next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank both of you, Joanne and Brian, for attending the meeting, and I'd love to get your perspectives on where things stand in Albany with the Less is More Act, the criminal justice reform, act that I know you both support, and I just wonder, what your perspective is on the politics about it, or the process, or where things stand now.
You want me to take a step first, Joanne?
Sure, because I know we're going to be coming back and doing some more criminal justice reform bills, but I don't know exactly what those are. Because there are a couple of things, including things like elder parole and stuff like that. So Brian, you may know a little bit more about it than I.
Yeah, so less is more for those who aren't as up on this as Jonathan, is a bill that basically deals with the fact that you can have your parole revoked in New York for what anybody I think would consider, a technical violation of the terms. And revoked means re-arrested and incarcerated. And it also happens that even though this is a state requirement, the local government has to put people into jail. So it's also an issue for jail capacity in New York. And it's Senator Benjamin and this, I forget who the assembly sponsors. I think there's a lot of support. I don't want to predict. We really have been very, wrapped up in the budget issues. We also, I should note, there was a huge victory for criminal justice reform in the halt solitary. It has been the case that our state has continued to engage in solitary confinement in a manner that amounts to torture as defined by the UN. It's been really, I think a terrible situation for a long time, and we've now finally passed that right. As part of the budget negotiations, we got that done as well. There are, as Joanne mentioned, two other issues related to parole. One of them is to basically create a kind of, smoother process to grant parole generally, and the other focuses on older people, people who are defined as people over 55. And there's a lot of interest in these things, and I think a desire to do them. I can't predict where we're going with them. I should say, for the sake of full disclosure, I have a minor difference of opinion on the elder parole bill, because I think, like, what the bill says is if you've been in for 15 years or you're 55, if you've been at least 15 years and you're 55 or older, you have a opportunity to have your sentence reviewed with the possibility of release, and then you get an explanation for why you're not being released, and then that happens every 2 years henceforth during the time of your incarceration. I am skeptical of the idea that we should tailor these things around the age of the inmate. I've said to people I would support that if that comes to the floor, but I do wonder if it's really just and humane to be talking about, somebody who committed the crime when they're 40 and is now 55 gets, consideration of whether that sentence needs to continue, but somebody who committed their crime when they're 19 and they may be in for a quarter century now doesn't get that consideration. I do think, I think that we might be better off with a just broad-based principle that we review sentencing after, a set period of time, and 15 years feels like a good number to me. But in any case, we are working on all of those things, and I think that there's a good chance we get movement before June.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Thanks. Linda, did you want to ask a question?
Okay, one quick question. There's a Jamaican woman that I know, and I see her every day, and she never got her stimulus check, and she's got a British accent, and she's obviously an immigrant if she didn't get her check. And I want to help her. Is there a phone number that she could call to find out why the stimulus check wasn't sent to her? Because I just tuned in and I missed what you said.
Again, if she is actually a British national and not American, she wouldn't have been entitled to the prior benefits. If she does believe she was entitled to that, I think my office would be happy to help. But I think the shortest route to that might be to deal with the congressional representatives, because I think the federal government that distributes those checks is probably far more interested in hearing from a congressional representative than from a state rep. But if that doesn't work and somebody wants to call my office, I'm sure we can help sort it out if she believes she was eligible.
Yeah, she believes she was eligible, and she's in tears because all her friends got it, and she's just, I want to help her.
Okay. Feel free to call, have her call my office, or you can call my office and connect us with her.
Her congresswoman is Maliotakis, and this woman is a Jamaican, and I don't know if she's going to be willing to help her. She may not even be in this district. She might be in Jerry Nadler's district.
She's not in this district. Just she's going to be in Diane Savino's Senate district.
Yeah, she's in Diane Savino's center. All right, I'll tell her to talk to Diane Savino. She might be able
Yeah.
to get the info. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Does any other budget related questions or any other questions for Joanne or Brian? Right,
I have one
if,
other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't mind. And it's about the budget, and that is, and this is an issue Brian and I have both worked on a lot, and that is gun violence prevention. And we were able to get the Community Violence Intervention Act in the budget, which was really led by Zellner Myrie and Diana Richardson. And it provides for $10 million for the community-based gun violence prevention programs and the hospital-based gun violence prevention programs, and really directs 10% of federal money that comes under the Crime Victims Act to always go to those community-based gun violence prevention programs that really give young people something to do other than pick up a gun. They are really very, very effective. And they are very effective in interrupting violence so that it doesn't occur on our streets. So I wanted to just mention that to you because I think it is going to make a big difference in the level of gun violence in New York State, and particularly in Brooklyn, which has really suffered a great deal this last year.
I see a question, Shefali.
Yeah, thank you. And Joanne and Brian, thank you so much for being here tonight. Just with your comment around the community-based gun violence prevention, I wondered, do you know if there are any funds also earmarked to what's kind of commonly known as SEPTED, or the greening of spaces, so the environmental design that goes behind violence prevention and gun violence prevention as well?
I am not familiar with anything in the budget on that in particular. One of the things that, we are continuing to work on is to continue to provide more funds through the Gun Violence Research Institute. And I think one of the things on gun violence research is that the environmental issues as well that needs to be addressed. And it might be that we can get money through some of the environmental funds going forward. We will have a Environmental Bond Act will be on the November ballot in a referendum for the public to approve $3 billion in bonding for the environment that would go along with the community and leadership and what used to be the Climate and Community Protection Act, and then it became something else because it made
Climate leadership and community.
Thank you.
protection.
Yeah, it made him happy. Thank you. So it's a very good question. I'm not aware that we did anything this year on that particular issue.
The money that the community money we did is money that would go to local organizations. It's conceivable that one of them could design a program around making some of those kinds of changes. But yeah, I don't know that any of us. I have heard of those initiatives, and I think they're important contribution to the gun violence prevention space. But
Yeah,
I don't know that any of this money is specifically earmarked for that.
that's fair. There's a lot of research into their efficacy as well. So, but I'll look into it further. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Steve, do you have your hand up for a question for this one, or is that a lingering hand? Okay, no problem. Great. Well, I think thank you both. That was super informative. I appreciate everybody's questions. Now we'll move on to our guest speaker for tonight, Ms. Zakia Ansari from the Alliance for Quality Education, AQE. Brian touched on this group a little bit, but a statewide coalition which has advocated since 2000 for increasing New York State school funding equity and ensuring that there's adequate funding in lower-income areas of New York for the schools. Ms. Ansari is the advocacy director and the New York City director for the Alliance for Quality Education. She's been fighting this fight for more than 20 years and has also raised 8 children enrolled in New York City public schools. And AQE had some big wins in the recent budget. And so I'd just love to hear all about it. Thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Zakia Ansari.
Thank you for inviting me, Tyler. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. As was shared, I'm Zakia Ansari, Advocacy Director for AQE. And yeah, Tyler, I don't know if you got my slideshow. It's only like 4 slides. I'm gonna keep it quick because I know everybody zoomed the heck out. I know I am. This is like number 8 for me. So
yeah, I got it right here. Let me do present mode. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Cool. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. You just tell me when to move.
Yeah. So real quick, so let me give some backstory. Many folks may know, because I think there's folks here from Manhattan, no, Brooklyn, another one. So in 1993, Robert Jackson, then a parent and some other parents, was a lead plaintiff in a equity lawsuit called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. He realized that when his kids were in school, he was on the school board. The schools in his community in Washington Heights didn't have access to a lot of things, right? Inequity was real. So he decided to sue the state. After a 13-year battle in the courts, the highest court, the Court of Appeals, upheld the decision and said, you know what? New York State is not meeting its constitutional obligation to provide every child with a sound basic education. And in 2000, we were created as the campaign, not even as an organization, to like organize parents, to be the organizing arm around the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, to get New York State to, to keep it in there and get parents to put pressure, to pay attention, and ultimately to get parents to like consistently keep pressure on New York State to remind them that they have not fulfilled their obligation. So in 2006, because of our pressure, we were able to get, I think, Governor Spitzer to put a historic amount of money of $5.5 billion. Again, this is a statewide initiative. It wasn't just for New York City, even though it started out just in New York City. 2 years, schools received $1 billion plus, began to see some increases in success for students statewide, and then the market crashed, as you know. And so it's been our commitment and to ensure that New York State, again, the legislature has not forgotten that they have not fulfilled their commitment. So here we are, 2021, woo, wow, 2001, that was a long time ago. 2021, right in the midst or towards the end or whatever this is gonna look like of a pandemic, right? We were actually part of AQE, part of the Invest in Our New York campaign that the senator talked about. We knew we could not get any dollars for schools if we didn't raise revenue. We knew we couldn't get dollars to cancel rent and all those other things, healthcare and all those things, if we didn't raise revenue on the wealthiest New Yorkers. And we didn't buy into the narrative that $50 billion or even $90 billion was too much, because the need is great, right? And it just didn't happen under the pandemic. It exacerbated it, but it just didn't happen under there. So like I said, that equity lawsuit that I talked about was in 1993. In 2020, we had not fulfilled that commitment. We were still fighting for these dollars. Who would have thunk it? In 2021, because of the collective work statewide, parents and educators and community members for decades, progressive legislators, new and some that have been in there for some time, the perfect storm of events of everybody's talking about Cuomo, his scandals, right? I personally believe if one of those things did not exist, we might not have gotten these dollars, right? I really believe that we might not have gotten up such a progressive budget passed this year. Had not one of those things, if one of those things was out of whack, out of tilter, we might not be here today. But I have to say, we're in this historical moment as QE. We have got New York State to invest in 3-year phasing of those dollars after almost 30 years. And what that is a reminder to us all, I hope, and what we keep pushing forward, is that this movement for justice is a marathon, not a sprint. That we must continue to keep up the fight because there's so much at stake. And that even though my children are out of school, I have grandchildren in school. And I thought that point, I would never see this in my lifetime get passed. And here we are, almost 30 years later, almost $4 billion will be passed, as well as billions, $12 billion across the board from the federal government at the same time. Right, this is a historic moment across the board, money flowing to education, but we couldn't have done it without all those things happening and its continuous pressure from community members, young people, educators, and
Yeah, we may have lost
not a
you,
lot
Zakia.
of-
Oh, there you go. All right.
my internet acting wacky.
You
I'm gonna
froze
turn
up
off
a
my
little
camera.
bit.
Okay. We can hear you now, okay.
Of course you can't.
Okay.
My internet's acting up.
It's been a curse for our speakers today, Senator
hear?
Kavanaugh. Yeah, we can hear you okay. Can you hear me?
My telephone, maybe that'll be easy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Give us
That'll be
give us
easier. So give
us a
me
call
like
back.
2 minutes. I'll call right back in.
Okay, no problem. This will just give me one more chance, because you know I've been itching for it, to remind everybody that you can go to IND's calendar. Which is right here. For those of you that had not joined us at the time, this is where we're hosting all of our phone bank information. For example, we've got one on the 19th for Joanne. And I reminded everybody we're trying to cooperate but compete with the co-host clubs of BYD, CBID, and LID. Have the most members at this co-hosted phone bank for Joanne. So come on out, Monday, April 19th. That also happens to be my mom's birthday. And she would want nothing more than for y'all to come out and make some calls for Joanne. Let me see. All right. Awesome. Well, while we're here, while we're taking a moment, actually, Jason, you mentioned you might have a quick county committee point.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just take this opportunity to jump in and mention. I don't know if Jesse's still here, but we've been trying to get the group together to do a meeting of the 52nd ADC, the county committee for the 52nd Assembly District. I know we were talking about a date in mid-May. I won't say it yet because I don't know if we're totally locked, but I think we are been talking with Jesse and with Josh and some other folks, county committee members. And I think at that meeting, we're going to be doing a couple of different things, going over some of the rules that a group prepared last year. If people remember, before everything shut down, we were going to vote on a new set of rules to govern ourselves, and then look at filling out some of the officer positions and leadership positions for the ADC to sort of complete our process of filling that out and complying with those rules. Jesse, anything you want to add on that? Other than to say we look forward to doing it, and it's been too long, but we'll get it all together so that we're official.
No, thank you, Jason, for bringing that up, and I think have a to-do to talk to a couple other folks. But yeah, we're just trying to get our P's and Q's together, which I'm happy to have the opportunity to use that phrase, and look forward to getting the 52nd County Committee, the Assembly District Committee all together. So
If I remember correctly, I know there's a treasurer position. There may be vice chair, and there's a couple of empty positions that we'll be needing to fill. So we'll communicate that when we communicate with people about the date. But start thinking, please, if you have a little time and may want to be involved in the leadership. We can use many hands making light work, sort of thing.
That's good. Thanks. While we have a moment, and actually this is a question I hope to ask before we transition, but I would just love to hear more from Joanne. I don't know if Brian is still on, but just about the folks that went on hunger strike to secure the fund for excluded workers, and just what it was like to, I don't know, I was kind of struck by that. That seemed very powerful to me. I just love to hear about like whether you were able to interact with any of those folks that were on a hunger strike, and what effect you think that may have had on the legislation.
Yeah, I don't know, Brian, if you're still on, but I think that there were an awful lot of legislators who probably were not aware that it was happening. You know, people were hunger striking where they in the city, right, and where they weren't in Albany demonstrating, because you're not allowed to come into the Capitol anymore because of COVID. So instead of having, you know, people coming in and lobbying, that's just not happened this year. So it's been very much online, Zoom lobbying and Zoom press conferencing and stuff like that. There were 6, I believe, legislators who slept overnight in the war room in the Capitol, and to basically demonstrate that we needed that money for excluded workers. There was some concern about the excluded workers. I think a lot of it was people didn't understand how it would work. People asked questions about it. Some people had misunderstandings. There were some changes made to the original proposal. There were some people raising questions about the interaction with immigration law and whether or not, if someone was a public charge, i.e. you asked for benefits or you got some money from the government, whether that would be a barrier to your eventually getting a green card and citizenship. And that was a very pertinent question because the Trump administration had put into effect a very, very aggressive and mean, for lack of a better term, interpretation of the public charge rule, which we had never really enforced in that way. The Biden administration is not doing that. So that issue is not the issue that I think some of my colleagues were concerned about. There was a good deal of consternation, and towards the latter part of the budget negotiations, a good bit of criticism, particularly on Twitter, of some of the colleagues who had raised a number of questions. That made for a very difficult budget because there were a lot of hurt feelings. There were people who were, in some cases, senators, being quite critical and naming names of assembly members that they believed were trying to hold things up. And I found that to be just very unsettling. One of the things you do when you go into the legislature is you are supposed to have a deliberative process and be able to, within the group, discuss legislation and discuss the budget and discuss the positives and negatives or your views or your questions. And so when there are leaks from the conference that get to the public, then people start to clam up and they're not going to get their questions answered. And they are more likely to vote against something if they don't understand it and they don't feel that they can express their concerns. So for many of us, it was a very, very difficult, frustrating budget because there was a great deal of tension in the room. There have been, from time to time, leaks. You know, there was a video of a conference, you know, a couple of months ago that people heard about. That was none of the newer members, by the way. It was a member who's been there for a long time. But, you know, one of the things I think has been very difficult for the newer members is to figure out what that deliberative process is when you're on Zoom. So one of the things that, you know, and Joan can certainly talk about this, you get to know your colleagues, not just because you're sitting in conference, because you only have 3 minutes to say your piece or ask your questions about something that we're conferencing. So it's not like you have a lot of speaking time kind of thing, right? but you do have somebody sitting next to you that you can say, I don't know how I think about that. What do you think? Or did you get that information? Or you run into somebody in the hallway or in the speaker's lounge or in the ladies' room or what have you. People that sit next to you in conference are different than the people that sit next to you in the chamber, for example. So those are different relationships that you're able to build from just the human interaction. In Zoom, it's very difficult. So for the newer people, they don't know anybody, right? So they're trying to engage in this process, and it's just a difficult thing. And so I think the newness of a lot of members, the fact that we were Zooming and there was very little opportunity for real relationship building in the way we normally do that, made for some difficulties. But also, of course, some senators who were quite vocal about assembly members who they blamed. And in reality, it wasn't entirely accurate, but each one of those senators who complained that there wasn't enough money in the budget voted for the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Well,
it was hard.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I guess in the spirit of overcoming Zoom related challenges, I think Zakia is back on. Zakia, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Great. Thank
Okay.
you. I'm so glad.
Awesome. Well, welcome back.
Let's not hesitate. Let's just throw that presentation up. So
Let's do it. Okay. So I don't know if you can see it, but I will put it up now. Sec. And this one. Okay, it is up.
All right, awesome. So like I said, we're getting a historic amount of both state money and federal dollars. You can go to the next one. Thank you. So this is specifically federal dollars. So if you have kids in school, you work in a school, you engage somewhere in the community, statewide, this is not just New York City, this is statewide, right? Every school district must have a plan by July 1st, 2021, posted on its website. Every school district in New York City is considered one school district, as many of you know, or may not know, but the assembly member knows. So that's New York City as a whole, must get public comments from parents, teachers, and other stakeholders on the plan, and take such comments into account in development of the plan. I don't need to go into detail, but please feel free to share this presentation, Tyler, with folks if they want it afterwards.
Okay.
Tonight, we had our first accountability conversation with parents and community members with Senator Robert Jackson. It went really well. Billions of dollars are coming. We need to make sure those most impacted are part of giving the solutions of how those dollars should be spent. You can go to the next one, thanks. So again, this is federal dollars. And these are some of the allowable uses of the money. So maximizing space for more safe in-person instruction, purchasing educational technology, right? Both devices as well as online instructional material. Many children in September, whatever we think normal looks like, many will still be remote learning. Those things will still need to be in place. Addressing students' needs stemming from not being in the classroom in person for almost 2 academic school years, including learning loss experiences by low-income students, students with disabilities, English language learners, and students who experience homelessness, right? Implementing evidence-based strategies to address social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of students, right? We want things that have been proven to work. These are the dollars. This is what you can spend these billions of dollars that are coming on. Offering evidence-based summer programs, after school, and other extended learning and enrichment programs. Many of you, some of you might have seen, if you have kids in schools or whatever, that the Department of Education just put out their Summer Rising, I think they're calling it program, or not program, but initiative. And then lastly, supporting early childhood education. So again, that's federal dollars on top of the state piece, which is coming up next. You can touch the next one. So this is how much funding did we get state? We got a restoration of the $1.1 billion from that pandemic adjustment that was cut in 2020. I don't know if you heard that before, but Governor Cuomo, in the midst of the pandemic last year, we got $1.1 billion from that initial pot of dollars. And he took that money and put it in a line item called pandemic adjustment. That means schools got $0 increase. And New York City schools specifically got $1 billion, well, not totally from the state, but about a $700 million or so cut. but ultimately wound up cutting $1 billion from public schools in the midst of a pandemic. So we got that restored, which is great. We got an increase of $1.4 billion in foundation aid. So the foundation aid formula was created under that Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit that I was sharing. It is the best way right now we have to equitably distribute dollars to students. And so that we are seeing an increase, $1.4 billion, with the full amount being phased in by 2023 and 2024. And also, this is really important, becoming part of the annual foundation aid amount that schools across the state will be receiving. So it becomes like forever, like we are going to be using that and receiving those dollars annually. An expansion of pre-K to school districts that do not have any, with an increase of $105 million. I heard folks talking, I don't know if it was the assembly member or someone else sharing, this pandemic, women of color, women across the board are the ones have been out of work so much, like had lost employment, could not go back to work, et cetera. Not that they're the only ones that take care of children, but they are largely the amount of the folks that do take care of kids. Pre-K across the rest of the state, not New York City, was, as you know, like it used to be half day, which is like 2.5 hours, and no one can go to work. Don't let it be a half a day, it's an hour and a half or something, that craziness. I know my kids were in school, that's what it was. We are fortunate in New York City, we have full day pre-K, and we also have 3K. That was because de Blasio fought really hard for that to happen when he got elected. Now, New York State, we can make sure that all 4-year-old babies across New York State have access to pre-K, quality pre-K. So $105 million increase, and then a historic increase of $2.4 billion investment in the childcare sector, right? Again, parents have to go to work. You want to make sure that your baby is in safe spaces. If your thing is jumpstarting the economy, we got to make sure that our children are taken care of, else no one's going to be able to go to work and work productively. Last slide, and then I can answer any questions you have. So here is a chart, and eventually all the districts across New York State, this will be up on our website, our AQE website. So I'll do New York City. I'm assuming everybody here is New York City, right, Tyler? I'm making an assumption. Yeah. Okay, so you'll see I'll just go with the New York City one. The first 2 columns are state. The last 2 columns are federal dollars, right? So we got increased New York City foundation aid, that formula that I was sharing with you, $530 million this year. The total state aid increase is $1.3 billion. And then the last 2 columns are the $2.1 billion was from the CARES funding, I believe, is federal, no, is from the funding we got in December. And then the American Rescue Plan Act was $4.8 billion, which is the dollars that we just got from the Biden administration. So as you can see, that's about a lot of money that's come into schools. Different pots, the federal dollars, but for clarity, is a one-shot deal. We will not see those dollars again. But as you saw on the first chart that I put out, they will be, as long as you've got a plan for each of those years, it can be expanded over. So it doesn't have to be all spent up in 1 year. We have at least a 3-year or so opportunity to spend those dollars. A significant amount of money, but if you have other folks that are around the rest of the state, family members and others, please feel free to share this, like I said, presentation, and we will have this on our site shortly. I think that was the last one, and I don't know if anybody has any questions. Was that the last slide? I think, right?
I think so, yeah. Here, I'll just.
So that was a lot of information this weekend, but I just want to see if anybody had any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you for all that info. Danielle, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of that. That's really great news. I guess I'm wondering kind of what we think that's going to go to in New York City, and is that going to fill the gaps we have, or like is there a next battle to fight on this front? Because I know this has been years and years.
Yeah, that was the first leg of the marathon, right? So the next leg which is to me is the work, which is to make sure that money gets to these children that is geared to get to, right? And so, like I shared, we had our first meeting today. We're calling it, we think it's accountability, right? Like, how are we engaging all community members and stakeholders in the conversation about, in Rochester, how do you think your dollars should be spent? In district, whatever, school district, whatever here in New York City, how should those dollars be spent? So that we can help put forth a comprehensive plan for the Department of Education, but also our local school districts to say, we believe that these dollars should be spent. And a lot of what we heard today was social and emotional supports for young people, special education services, right? To make sure that young people are getting the services that they need, that they hadn't had for so long. Supports for schools and educators as well, you know. So that was some of the stuff that came out today. So that is the next leg of this marathon, this race, which is how do we make sure that these dollars get to where they need to? Because what we know is that if it doesn't, and the outcomes are not where they need to be, that the federal government, if they do it at all, or even the state, will not give us this opportunity of this pot of money again. And then lastly, I also say these dollars are specifically for earmarked for a particular population of young people, right? English language learners, students with disabilities, poverty, students in temporary housing, right? Communities of children who have been underfunded and have been waiting for these dollars to come. And now we need to make sure we rise to the occasion to make sure they receive them. And that was just, they were waiting for them to come. That was before a pandemic, right? So in the midst of a pandemic, loss, trauma, death, you know, depression and all that entails. Now we need to make sure those dollars actually get to supporting them, social workers, school counselors, anything that they need to flourish. And it is way more than enough money. The need is great. We just, it will only be as good as we spend it, right?
Awesome, thanks. I think I see, Michael, you have your hand up?
Yep, hi everybody. Hi, Zakia, I'm a big Zakia fan. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. It was a really pleasure to work with Zakia, several times over the last few years. And I just had a question. And so the foundation aid deliverance is a huge deal. That's money that we've been trying to have Albany, or I should say the governor, deliver for, was it 15 or 16 years now? So that's a huge victory. I just wanted to know how I mean, that's quite a sum, and the schools are owed a great deal. Like how much of the pie does this budget deliver? Like how much foundation aid is yet to be delivered in New York City? Like how much
this year will be $530 million.
And I think the amount that was outstanding was over $1 billion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's still a big victory, and there's still a ways to go. But this is great. I'm not trying to take away from the victory, but it's just like the magnitude of money that's owed in New York City, and it's really staggering. But I mean, this really wouldn't have happened for you, Zakia, and all the work you've been doing over the years, and so many people who've really centered education. Like the Assembly member, I think it's really important to recognize the work that you've been doing in this space, and also Assembly Member Simon.
Yeah, shout out to Assembly Member Simon for sure. Absolutely, appreciate you.
Awesome, thanks. Well, if anyone else has a question, please jump in. I do have one that I think is going to sound like a softball, but I don't mean it in that way. Like, this is a pretty huge win. After 20 years of fighting, I mean, did you take 10 minutes to enjoy it? Did you like high five someone, or did you start planning, these meetings?
We had this meeting on the books before we went out. We did as soon as we heard about the budget, we had like a quick internal high five. And then the next day we had a shorter kind of Zoom with Senator Jackson. And we just invited a bunch of our parent leaders to get on, and whoever could get on. We're looking to do a bigger one on the 23rd. I'll make sure that y'all get an invitation. We would love for you to join us. It's going to be virtual. And then I think in June, when it gets warmer, we're going to do something like a block party, something really big. Because you're right, it is a big deal. So yes, and we took a 1-week mental health break thanks to our ED. The day after we took a whole week off, we started that last year during the pandemic. It's a lot of work, as you can imagine, going into the budget. It's mentally, physically, emotionally exhausting every year, even on Zoom. And so we got to take a week off. So we just came back this Wednesday.
Yeah, I think you actually responded to my invite while your work email was auto responding. So thank you for doing that, because I really appreciate it. Great. Well, I just commend you for all your work, and that's a huge win. It's sort of, I think as Democrats, we're frankly unaccustomed to celebrating wins of this kind, but that's a great effort. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll just say
to-
thank you for inviting me. And like, you know, every year, even though it's in the budget, every year is a fight. You know, the assembly member will tell you, right? There's no guarantee until that money is in the bank and we are like figuring out how we're going to spend it. And so I hope that you all will continue to engage with us on this, because we're going to need all hands on deck from now on, because we don't know what next year is going to bring. And we can't afford, our children can't afford one more year of not having what they need to be successful. All the issues and the things that we experience can be addressed if we really are starting from the get-go. And that's when we have an opportunity from birth to higher education to really plan out a better future for children who have been marginalized and sometimes forgotten. And so, you know, I would love to stay connected and just, you know, engage y'all in the fight with us on the path for educational justice for our children.
Great. We'd be happy to join, and thank you so much for joining and informing us about this. I think you mentioned it would be all right if I distributed that slideshow like on our Facebook page or something.
Absolutely. And please, you know, feel free to follow us on subscribe to our page. We are constantly doing actions and engaging folks. You might want to join one of our accountability conversations. We'd love to have you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That is all I have on the agenda. Thank you so much to all of our speakers, and especially thank you to Ms. Ansari for joining us today. Reminder, phone bank on the 19th. Let's get Joanne's name out there. If you have any questions or just want to congratulate us on organizing all these phone banks, let me know. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, Hal. Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Great job, Tyler.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate everybody getting on, and let's be in touch, okay?
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks,
Have a good night,
everybody.
guys.
Take care.
Have a
Good
good
job,
night.
Tyler.
Night.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Great meeting.